Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about the dramatic and sudden rise in generative artificial intelligence and how this affects the data sector, including how companies practice data analytics. To discuss that, I'm joined by Sudheesh Nair, Chief Executive Officer of ThoughtSpot. Sudheesh, thanks so much for joining us today.
James, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to talk about how generative AI is affecting data analytics, but I think that the interesting point here is that data and AI are so joined with one another. I think people don't even fully realize AI is nothing without a vast, vast trove of data. So, I mean, it's really, in many ways, they are the same thing. How do you see the rise of generative AI affecting data analytics?
Well, I think you're absolutely right in the sense that AI is about artificial intelligence, right? Let's look at natural intelligence. How do we become who we are? Because artificial means opposite is natural. We are intelligent people.
Right.
Go back to the beginning of it. We grow up, and at some point in time, we learn to speak. And one of the first things that kids do is ask questions. And they usually ask why. Then if you have children, you know that the why never stops. They keep asking why. Then you also see that in that first few years, they learn so much. And they become more intelligent. So the foundation for natural intelligence is brain with an amazingly powerful interface, a user interface, which is natural language.
Right.
So when you start thinking about artificial intelligence, things don't change much. It is about how much data can we feed it and then deliver an amazing user interface with big bandwidth to train the brain to learn. And in that context, it is all about data. The question is data plus compute, language plus brain.
Right.
And the same thing applies to artificial intelligence.
Well, and I think it's an interesting example you say in that there's that child learning, and of course the child does have an advantage over the artificial intelligence platform, not in terms of raw knowledge, of course, but in terms of that human being has layers of values and bias and judgments and ability to make nuanced, creative judgments that the artificial intelligence platform, in all of its deep, intelligence, really does not have. That the nature of creativity and nuance. There is a big difference there, which may make a difference in how we interact with data and data analytics.
There are use cases. There are ideas that will be out of reach for artificial intelligence. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. However, there are also, so for example, let's think of two extremes. One extreme is a customer support chatbot, something that we all gotten used to. My iPhone is not connecting to AirPlay or whatever, right?
Sure. Right.
I go into there and the system actually goes through the knowledge base and probably delivers something, gives me the answer. So that is an extreme. But if you just connect the same dots all the way to the other extreme, you go to a general physician, your GP. What does a GP do? And most of the time, a GP went to school and lots of textbook that they studied maybe 15, 20 years ago is not relevant anymore. So they go to conferences, they read New England Journal of Medicine, and they try to keep their knowledge base updated. When you go there, they like to talk to you. James, what are you seeing? What do you have? What do you feel?
Right.
Try to do pattern matching, and then they prescribe a medicine, which is, again, coming from a pharmaceutical company's data.
Sure.
The rep will come and once in a while update you, hey, we have this new medicine, new composition. That's all it is. So think about, I'm not saying that the GPs can be directly replaced with the AI, but if you boil it down to the process, is it possible for machines to absorb New England Journal of Medicine faster than a human being can? Yeah. Is it possible for them to directly go to GSK or Merck's composition index and clinical research and come back and say, here are the medicine, here are the allergy diet for that, and then come out with a prescription? Possible. My point is, there is a huge spectrum of use cases where AI can help and AI can displace the use cases that we have seen. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to be the best use cases for things like what you mentioned, because three things will affect it. What sort of data did it train on? What sort of algorithms did it use? And were there any biases that were already coded into it? and what were the intent and the prompt of the user who were prompting it to generate those answers. Those three things will absolutely decide whether it goes closer to the boundary that you talked about with ethics and bias and things like that. So it is a real problem.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting example in terms of the general practitioner, and he or she is reading journals, going to conferences, and of course, it seems like the ideal combination of those two entities, where the doctor and the Gen AI platform, is for them to really work together. So it seems like doctors and data professionals and professionals across all fields are going to have to be really partnering with generative AI platforms, including data professionals. So it's really going to be not the human and not the Gen AI, but it's going to be almost a fusion of humans with generative AI platforms.
You just made ThoughtSpot with James. That's exactly. We are not saying that data should decide. We are not saying human beings should decide without data. What we are saying is data should prompt and help find the signals that are otherwise hard to find for a human being, or maybe not efficient for a human to find, and then partner with a conversational journey. So when it comes to structured data analytics, our point of view is, I'll give you an example. So you create content, and hopefully we will make something good and delightful and useful.
Right.
If you want to know how can I do better as a content creator, today's analytics, where it ends is it will provide you a dashboard. I'm sure your platform at eWEEK probably gives you a dashboard that maybe Tableau creates for you, which shows here are the last 10 episodes. Here are the number of people who read it or watched it.
Yep.
That's it. Now you have to decide, how am I going to get 10% more? And that decision making is completely decoupled from the analytics, because analytics dashboard stopped. Now it's all you deal with it.
Right.
Imagine instead of doing that, it comes to you and say, hey, Rick, did you know the episode that you just released had 13% more people watching? And by the way, 93% of them were women from Boston area. And they actually stayed through the whole thing. And there is a specific place they went back and listened to again. Now that is interesting. So now you're like, okay, tell me more.
Right.
You ask more questions and you will end up with an action that hopefully help you create better content. So moving data to insight to knowledge to action is the key. Today, BI tools will end at data to insight and leave you to figure out the knowledge to action part with your experience. Imagine AI is helping analytics to stay through the entire journey as a co-pilot, as a sidekick for the human. That's the pitch we are making at ThoughtSpot.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's look at the industry sector itself in terms of who wins and who loses in the data sector based on generative AI's rise. I mean, so obviously there's a lot of potential there, but there are some people that are going to be pushed into obsolescence perhaps, and of course other people are going to really make zillions of dollars. So who are the winners and losers as Gen AI comes on the scene?
So Gen AI is going to affect pretty much everything that we know with computing, because like I said, it is changing the interface. I mean, just like 15 or maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, people used to use punch card to talk to mainframes.
Right.
In 4 or 5 years, we look back and say, we used to point and click. We used to have keyboard where it's AISDF. We will say that this was archaic, because why would you do that when you can speak? Why would you write C++ when you can tell?
Sure.
Hopefully that'll get there. Which brings me back to the large scope of impact on applications. I'm not qualified to speak about all that. I can tell you from an analytics point of view or structured data, the kind of companies that will struggle are the ones who took the last 10, 15 years customers' complexity as an opportunity. That is, companies like Tableau and other traditional BI companies who actually delivered dashboards, and BIs become so built into their user flow that they thought that they don't need to disrupt themselves. They will struggle because this is a sweeping change, because we are offering new capabilities that cannot be done by sprinkling search, sprinkling natural language. Like next week, probably Tableau will have an announcement where they will announce, oh, we will support GPT through as a checkbox. This is not a checkbox. This is a foundational play, right? Companies that have failed to innovate, failed to seed for AI in the last 10 years, they will struggle. Number two, companies who use governance and security and everything to stay away and move things slowly will struggle. And this applies to all verticals. You could be the biggest bank, you could be the biggest insurance company or pharmaceutical company. And if you say, well, it's a toy that Silicon Valley is playing with, we have real data, real lives at stake. We have government regulations holding us back. For every one of those companies, there will be someone else in that same space, figure out how to responsibly use this and overtake them. So companies that are small will struggle. And coming down to the details, I believe dashboard companies will fail. Dashboards are a poor way to represent analytics. Dashboards are necessary, but dashboards are nearly not enough. It needs to move farther into a conversational analytics where AI is powering every step of the way with absolutely no constraints on the questions you can ask. So the platforms have to be built for that. We are lucky. We had the foresight to go build something and be ready with it. But even we believe that every 6 months, we need to be a different company. That is the speed and urgency with which we are moving.
That's quite a bit of change where you say to yourself, every 6 months, we need to be a different company. That's a rapid evolution. So are you talking about that? One point that you're talking about the dashboard, of course, the relationship between a data professional and his or her dashboard is pretty close. So those data professionals are, they wake up looking at their dashboard. They probably dream with the dashboard. So you're saying ThoughtSpot has transcended the dashboard. Well, let's talk about what then is the ThoughtSpot solution that is so beyond the dashboard.
Let me give you an example. So let's say you're in a new city and you want to find out where to eat. The old model, you will go down to the lobby, talk to the expert, the data expert, the local,
and local restaurants.
And she's going to pull out a map and draw a few circles and say, here is how you go, James.
I've done that, yeah.
Right? That is the dashboard life. When I'm talking about dashboards are not enough, I'm talking about going to Yelp. Now, Yelp creates the graph and points, but think about how you got there and how that map is not the end, it's the beginning of the journey. You ask restaurants. It shows you a map, just like that old map, shows you all the restaurants. Right. And then you say open now. So shows filters only the open ones. You don't want to go there and find out it is closed.
Right.
Then you say, I haven't had sushi for a while. Let me have sushi restaurants only. Let me look at the reviews. Let me look at some photos. You interact with the data. Remember, this is a dashboard, except it's alive. The dashboard that we want to kill are the ones that are already dead.
Static dashboards.
Exactly, because it puts a tax on the curious. It creates questions and don't answer them. There's nothing worse than waking up a sleeping person and say, go back to sleep. Right? That is the biggest thing that dashboards do. I'm saying, wake the people up and stay with them to answer the next question, because a well-designed dashboard will prompt more questions and you have to deliver them without putting a tax on their curiosity. And the ability for you to ask the restaurant after restaurant after restaurant. I didn't think of sushi until I saw it. Then I found the sushi restaurant. Then I want to look at direction. I want to look at photos. I want to reserve something. I want to walk. And then I'm coming with an outcome that is so bespoke and personal. I am happy. I could stand in the same hotel lobby and do the same journey from the same app and could end up in an Italian restaurant because that's what I wanted.
Right.
Dashboards don't do that. If I go back to the concierge, she will send me to the same restaurant you went to. So you can see the difference. I want the data professional to fall in love with the dashboards again because they came alive.
Well, all right, let's talk about specifically what makes it alive. Let's just say I'm looking at a classic, data dashboard that data professionals have used for years quite happily, and then to the left of that is going to be a ThoughtSpot dashboard, assuming there is such a thing. What physically is going to be going on in those two that's actually really tangibly different?
There will be three things that are fundamentally different. The first one is every piece of that thing that you say is created just when you load it. They're real time.
Okay.
So if there is a typhoon in the Pacific, you're not looking at yesterday's data or half an hour worth. It is now data.
Real-time data. Okay.
Real-time data. Because Snowflake and Databricks and Google and Amazon and others have made it possible. So that's number one. Number two, it'll enable you to drill anywhere and ask anything. This is second, which is, I see that shipping costs have gone up. Show me by a very specific from Shanghai to LA by this tonnage, taking this route on Sundays. My ability to sort of interact and back and forth. No tag. You can ask any question. If the data is there, we'll show the answer. Second.
And with a text prompt or actually voice yet?
Both. No, not voice, text and visual prompts.
Okay.
To show you that. We'll have monitor for mobile, which we're coming out, will have voice as well within the next weeks to months.
Okay.
The last part is, as you are looking at this live board, that's what we call it, as opposed to dead board / dashboards. The third thing that is different is that as you are looking through it, it'll start prompting you. Hey, James, did you know that there is this route that just opened up by this new company where the shipping costs are significantly lower? Now, I did not ask for it, but the system knew that my intent is to reduce my shipping cost and increase my OTIF, on-time arrivals. So I need to figure out what are the other options that are available to you that you did not ask for. That's the third thing. Dashboards, Tableau, Power BI, they don't do any of these things. They make the dashboards more Picasso-like and beautiful. And yeah, it's all important. But what good is a useless but beautiful picture compared to an insight that came to me exactly when I needed it, where I am, without me asking?
Well, let me make sure I understand that third point. It's an insight. Is it a piece of information that the dashboard offers the user, or is it a way of asking questions? What exactly is that third piece with that insight?
It's an insight to foresight journey. So let me explain that. Let's say I'm a coffee shop owner in Boston, and I'm trying to figure out, how many people are truly loyal to me,
right?
And why are customers not coming back, as an example.
Right. Sure.
In the world of dashboard, I can't ask why. I have to dumb it down and say, hey, show me all customers who came to me and did not come to me last month. So how many customers churned? To their credit, Tableau and Power BI have all done a really good job of building dashboard that will show you that answer.
Sure.
What ThoughtSpot does is the third bucket. As you are looking at it, it'll say, did you know that people who ordered on iPhones have a higher percentage of churn in March than in February? Now, I did not ask.
It will present that factoid even without being asked, you're saying.
And it does it because we captured the intent. So we are trying to make an assumption of what your intent is. You did not come to me to look at how many people had coffee or how many people watched my podcast. You came to me because you want to improve. I know your intent. So I'm going to make an assumption of your intent and give you some KPIs and show you the threshold and show some anomalies, and then put you in the middle of it to say, am I going in the right direction? And James is like, this is waste of time. Thumbs down to this insight. System is like, okay, I got it. Now let me try a different way. After the first couple of weeks by 10 or 15 people in the cohort doing the same job, imagine how better the system will be. The next insight coming to you has a much higher signal to noise ratio than the first one. This constant learning, constant reinforcing with human in the middle is a fundamental departure from the old school BI.
So you're really in a sense claiming that the ThoughtSpot solution reads the mind of the user. Am I correct?
I did not claim that, but I claim that.
No, you did not. Okay, but I'll ask a question anyways.
Yeah, it's not that we read the user's mind. We use parameterization. We use cohort analysis and pattern matching to figure out the route that you are most probably to take. It is very similar to how a Waze, as opposed to Google Map, how Waze give you an ETA, and based on satellite data, traffic data, and the input from other drivers, say, you know what, you want to get there, and there's a high propensity you're going to take this route. I think that ability, based on your past behavior, your cohort's behavior, there is plenty that you can do to partner with the person.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Yep, that's interesting. Well, all right. I think that the big question is the future of generative AI and data analytics. That is a multi-billion-dollar question, and I think it's a wildly unpredictable question because generative AI is changing even as we speak. But still, Sudheesh, I'm going to ask you, what do you see as the future of generative AI and data analytics here in, say, midway through 2023? What's it going to be a couple years or so down the road?
Yeah, I think, look, ThoughtSpot is right in the middle of it. We work with Google, we work with OpenAI, we work with Microsoft. We are in the Silicon Valley bubble. Anyone who says that they know exactly where this industry is going to be 2 years from is lying to you.
Right.
What I can tell you are 2, maybe 3 things that will reinforce itself.
Okay, good.
First one, large language models will become commoditized.
Right.
That is, more and more companies will come out with models because they have the computing power and they'll crawl and then deliver more tunable models. in the public domain world, and that will become accessible to everyone cheaper
Right.
and cheaper. That's number one. Number two, companies will figure out how to deliver capabilities that are similar to large language models, generative AI, in their data through verticalized smaller models. They will not share with outsiders. So if you look at from March to May, there are interesting use cases that have come out with respect to how you can train and tune with much lower capacity, much lower hardware cost using technologies like Lara, where you can take something like an open source that Meta released, Facebook released, like Llama, and turn that into a model that you can manage. In fact, in this context, large language models will become an albatross. You don't want to deal with them. So that is the second.
Let me be clear on that second one. It sounds like it's almost sort of a smaller range proprietary generative AI model. Would it be described that way?
Yeah, basically the capability that generative models are able to deliver at large scale will come to, which means that if you ask a very long question, show me everything that happened in California during springtime with my OTIF. Now, everything else other than the word OTIF can be abstracted from large language models. It is normal language. However, if I'm a supply chain specialist, I speak my own language. If I'm a federal contractor supporting Department of Defense, they speak English, but it doesn't sound like English. They'll say Oconus and Conus.
Right.
No one knows what Oconus and Conus is. They know because continental United States, outside continental United States, right? So every company have its own vocabulary. So if you can train your models internally and have your proprietary data that you have developed for the last 20 years, it makes no sense to give it up to Microsoft or Google, but you want the capabilities. So you build your own models and then find tools like ThoughtSpot that can straddle outside and inside. That's the second massive change. Does that make sense?
Well, the one question I have about that one, I like the idea. That one skeptical note I might say is companies have a hard time gathering the expertise to build those sophisticated models in-house. And so they go out of house, they go to larger, all-encompassing platforms instead of trying to build their own proprietary model because it's so expensive to gather the staff. So I'm not sure, that's my one note about that point number two. Can companies really afford to do that?
I don't disagree with you high level. However, remember, one of the changes here is that no one knows. There is no real expert here. Everyone's trying to figure out. What you will find is that for the first time, computing and open source has made it accessible for smart people in every organization, every country, and every company to be an expert in this space, which means that forward-looking analysts, forward-looking data professionals, they will all learn and improve and innovate. That's number one. Number two, remember expressibility and accessibility coming together because languages, everyone speaks English or some language, and it's not like you have to go learn a Python or a coding or something here to be useful. So domain knowledge expert, people who have been doing supply chain for the last 20 years in Pacific, they now have accessibility to test their thesis and build. So that will be the game changer there as well.
The enabler,
And the value is so high that companies will force the change necessary. The third and last thing I will say in this specific domain, the prediction, so to speak, is that multi-model capabilities will become real.
Wait, what predictability?
Multi-model, which means that it's all about text, but videos and images also will come within the context, which will open up a whole lot more use cases that are currently sort of locked within the confines of the theory.
Right.
So that is also going to open up new capabilities, which means that I don't think about 2 years out. I think about 6 months, and hopefully soon, maybe 3 or 1 month out. That is in which we have to start thinking.
Right. I think Sudheesh, I think it makes perfect sense. You said a lot of interesting stuff. I definitely learned a lot. Thanks so much for sharing your insights today. I hope you come back and talk with us again sometime. And thank you for today.
Of course. It's my pleasure. Thanks for making this an interesting conversation, bidirectional.